Woo! The Phoenix has landed. Oh, hey, the Ghost of Molly McGee background's up, which of course means it's time to review another one of its segments or episodes. So, what's the subject we'll be looking at this time? Oh, yes! Mazel! I'm not doing the exclamation point joke in 3 reviews in such close proximity to one another.
Mazel tov, Libby!
The beloved A segment of the series' 6th episode, and the point where most of the fandom, including myself, knew this show was gonna be something special. Now before I begin this review, I'd like to share some background about myself, since we are talking about a segment that focuses on an important part of Jewish culture. No, I am not Jewish myself. I'm a Gentile of German ancestry who just so happens to be familiar with the culture of where and around who I grew up. You see, I was born in Albany, New York, and raised in one of its suburbs, a town called Girdelen. Albany itself has a Jewish population of somewhere around 12 and 13,000. Whether my sources were referring to just the city or the entire county, I couldn't get a clear answer on. But I myself can confirm that many of my peers and teachers from my school days were Jewish, and my school district even had Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur off. I also have Jewish extended family on my mother's side. My maternal grandfather, who divorced from my grandma before I was born, married a Jewish woman, with whom she had a daughter who later had 2 kids of her own. The Jewish people in my life, and my admiration for their culture, have led me to researching their culture and history as deeply as possible, particularly in regards to the Wyler-centric stories I have planned for Otog, as well as the ficlets I've written as practice for the main series. Wendy in particular is based on some of my closest acquaintances from my school days, many of whom were Jewish like her. The point I'm trying to make is, even though I'm not Jewish myself, I do have connections to the Jewish community, including within my own family, albeit extended. And through those connections, and my own research, I've become familiar with the culture of their people. From the grieving process of Shiva, to Hanukkah traditions that go beyond just the menorah lighting, to the differences between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, to the tradition highlighted in today's subject, B'nai Mitzvah celebrations. Yes, that is the plural and gender-neutral form of the term. B'nai Mitzvah. Of course, as a Gentile, even with the research I've done, I'm not even going to pretend that I'm an expert on Jewish culture. But I will give a shout out to someone who is, being of the culture herself. My friend Jenna, who I consulted for help with writing the script for this review. She's a talented artist and dedicated archivist of foreign dubs, and one of the most fun people I've encountered on social media. You can follow her on Twitter, we are not calling it X, where she goes by Jemmy Bunny. Her tweets are a bright spot in the hellhole of a site that Elon Musk has transformed it into. Drop her a follow, you won't regret it. Okay, now that we got all that out of the way, let's dive into the segment. After a word from the strip of text telling you to smash that like button and subscribe. It's funny because it's a line from this show. But seriously, if you enjoy what you've seen from this channel so far, like, comment, and subscribe. It'd be much appreciated. Okay, now for real, let's dive in. First, the context of where we are in TGAMM's story and who the character of Libby stein-torres is. Libby stein-torres is a Jewish Hispanic girl of German and Argentinian background. She has been a social outcast since the 3rd grade, after a bedwetting incident rich popular girl Andrea Davenport's sleepover. They don't say that's what it is because kids show, but it's obvious. She meets Molly in the first episode's B segment, First Day Frights, and they bond over being outcasts at school, both because of their awkward behavior around Andrea. After working together to help Howell and Harriet with their unfinished business in the segment of the same name, Molly and Libby officially befriend each other. And even this early on, they have played on their town softball team together, made a homemade movie together, and Molly has helped Libby with her assignment on Diane Fossey. For those that don't know who that is, that's Jane Goodall except gorillas instead of chimps. As brought up a moment ago, Libby is the social outcast. As outcast characters often are, she has a shy and quiet personality, and at this point in the show, Molly is and has been her only friend, as the Chens are all the way in the next season, and Scratch hasn't even revealed his existence to her yet. In the days before the show introduced June Chen, many people in the TGAMM fandom, including myself, saw Libby as a representation of autistic people. I don't know how many still do, but I'm one of them, even if the show has only outright stated it about June.
I'm autistic, and I guess not everyone can handle my unbridled truth.
Anyone who knows anything about autism outside of the varying degrees of success by neurotypical writers and actors to represent it, and characters that were not explicitly written to be so but have many of the traits, would know that some of the traits of autism include being uncomfortable in social situations and having special interests, both of which are traits Libby has. Her special interests include turtles and conspiracy theories. The show at this point hasn't touched upon the latter yet, but we have seen her love of turtles in segments before this, and it, along with her social anxiety, are major details in the subject of this review. And yes, we will also be talking about autism and why this segment represents it so well, because on top of having great Jewish rep, which we will of course also be talking about, it also represents autism well, better than I bet even the staff themselves realized. Okay, now that we have all that established, let's talk about the segment proper. The segment starts with Molly receiving her invitation to Libby's bat mitzvah.
Woo! do a bat mitzvah.
Yes, for those wondering, this wordplay is going to be a running gag in this segment. Well, more Scratch trying to unleash actual bat sounds at the party than the pun itself. I just wanted to say there is payoff to this. Also, some facts about B'nai Mitzvah that those unfamiliar with Jewish culture may not know. It's mostly known by Gentiles as the name of the ceremony itself, but it's also, and more literally, the person who has come of age. B'nai Mitzvah is Hebrew for children of the commandments, and bar and bat mitzvah are Hebrew for son and daughter of the commandments respectively. I've used bar and bat mitzvah celebration before on my ficlets for this reason. I thought it'd be awkward to have a line that technically translates to, I've been to both son and daughter of the commandments, but Jewish people themselves just say one of these words mitzvah to describe the party, so I guess if they don't find it incorrect, neither should I. I'm not about to speak over a culture I'm not from. As we can see from the invitation reading, Libby stein-torres is called to the Torah as a bat mitzvah though, the show is very well aware of everything I've just said. Then again, the show's creators and this segment's writer are Jewish themselves, so when it comes to the Jewish representation from the show, and this segment in particular, we're in good hands. You probably also noticed that the invitation has some Hebrew text on it. Jenna has told me that it says Libby Simcha. The first name means my heart, and the second, the middle, Simcha is the middle name here, means joy. Libby Simcha stein-torres. Fitting name considering Libby's mother refers to her as her miracle several times throughout the show.
Chasing miracles. He's been out there chasing miracles, but he can't even see that he had the greatest one of all right in front of him. You.
Oh, trust me, we will be covering Like Father, Like Libby in a future review. Matthias Torres will not evade my wrath for long. But in the meantime, let's enjoy this moment of Libby expressing her middle name.
For months I've been studying Hebrew, practicing my Torah portion, and trying on dresses which have given me stress hives and contact hives.
Ugh.
I forgot to mention that sensory issues with clothing are also a symptom of autism.
But it'll all be worth it, because while I'm a girl today, on Saturday I shall become a woman.
I imagine hearing Today I Am a Woman, albeit a variation of it, spoken by characters on a cartoon, was a pretty big moment for Jewish animation enthusiasts, considering that most of the Jewish representation animation before the segment aired was just acknowledgement that Hanukkah was a thing. Later that night, Molly and Scratch research what bat mitzvahs are like, and they become so excited by the concept that they burst into song. You can probably guess how they, more specifically Molly, imagines the bat mitzvah. She imagines it as looking like a commercial for Barbie dolls, but I have to give special attention to a certain face Scratch makes here. I try not to talk about the goofy faces on the show because trust me, there's so many that you can make a drinking game out of every minute this show goes without its characters making a goofy face. Yes, that is what I meant to say, because making a drinking game out of every minute the show has a goofy face in it will turn you into a ghost yourself. Anyways, you want to see the goofy face? Get a load of this.
They'll have fountains of not only chocolate, but also ketchup, gravy, and ranch. And my best friends.
Look at that. His mouth is stretched to like 4 times its regular size. It's the opposite of the you like Krabby Patty's face. And people say puppet-rigged animation can't look as good as the hand-drawn stuff. Either that or the secret of making it look good is known only to the animators of Canada. Oh, and for those wondering, the specific animation studio behind the show is Mercury Filmworks, who, in addition to being one of Disney's most common clients, they've also worked on non-Disney shows such as Ruby Gloom, Wayside, Hilda, and Kid Cosmic. In other words, they have quite the reputation, even if common folk don't know their name. Anyways, point I'm trying to make is, goofy faces like this are what all true animators strive for. After the song, we Gilligan cut to see Molly and Scratch, surprised to see Libby went modest with her bat mitzvah.
So when's everyone else coming here?
Everyone is here.
I knew Sora being in Smash was gonna open the floodgates to non-video game characters getting in. Also, love this detail of Libby looking nervous when Molly asks about the possibility of anyone else coming. It's a small detail but effective in illustrating her social anxiety, as well as one of many examples of blink and you'll miss it details in the show that make it so well designed. Molly also takes note of the turtle aesthetic of the bat mitzvah.
Oh, I envy turtles. They can curl their soft, vulnerable bodies into their hard shells where none of life's sharp edges can harm them.
Yeah, every TGAMM fan thinks of the obvious meme to associate with Libby eventually.
Am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?
Both of the obvious memes. Anyways, I don't know if this is an autism thing too, but it probably is because it's also a me thing. And also, given what my own research into autism says, I'd argue it's an extension of what has been researched as an autism trait, comparing oneself to animals. While I'm best known on social media for how much I love raccoons, I actually associate myself more with Margot's species. As everyone who has been around rabbits would know, those big-eared lagomorphs are chubby, quiet vegetarians who don't like being around others. And so am I, hence why I choose to appear to you all as a leporine in these videos. Anyways, the trait that I believe comparing oneself with animals is an extension of is getting along better with animals than humans. Humans are judgmental and often bully their peers, especially if they're autistic. You know how canon event became a big term in 2023 after Across the Spider-Verse popularized it to describe life-changing events? As anyone who's seen Spider-Verse 2 would know, canon events in the case of the Spider People include getting bitten by the radioactive spider, the death of Uncle Ben or an equivalent, and the death of a police captain. Well, in the case of autistic people, I'd argue getting bullied, both by peers and by authority figures, for showing autistic traits, are canon events all autistic people go through. And those events lead what I wager to be a large percentage of us to seek interaction from those that won't judge us from how different we are. Some of us were or are lucky and have human friends to talk to. Others have animals. And for Libby, that's turtles. Or at least it was before she met Molly. Because after all, turtles don't have any concept of social anxiety or wetting a bed. So how could they judge Libby for it? Especially when they have the same favorite defense mechanism of retreating into a shell. Or equivalent. After Libby defends the small scale of her bat mitzvah, Molly overhears Libby's mother talking about the financial struggles that the family's bookstore is going through. Oh yeah, the stein-torres have a bookstore. It's called Bookmarks Spot. It doesn't officially appear until 2 episodes later. Anyways, Molly believes that the family's financial situation is the reason for the small party, and what she believes to be Libby making do.
Well, I'm making don't. Libby's a shining star, so I'm gonna give her the bat mitzvah she deserves.
Well, if we're gonna use the shining star comparison, the sun's a shining star and it's not supposed to be made the center of attention and looked at. Much like shy people like Libby. While everyone else is distracted with saving the cake, Molly sets out on livening up the party. If I had a nickel for every time I reviewed a TGAMM segment that had a scene of Molly creating a sensory nightmare for autistic people, I'd have as many nickels as there are Dan Povenmire shows that did this joke. Which isn't a lot, but it's unfortunate that it's happened twice.
Still needs one final touch. There you go, Bats. Go mitzvah.
Scratch? Mitzvahs aren't parties. They're one of 613 commandments listed in the Torah, as well as the good deeds performed to fulfill them. More on that later. Molly has also brought on the rest of the McGee family to liven up the party.
We need an ice volcano stat. On it.
Disregarding that ice volcanoes are an informal name for the cone-shaped ice mounds that form from waves crashing below ice shelves, wouldn't an ice volcano in terms of being an ice sculpture require electricity for, you know, the volcano portion of it to function?
Dad, you're our DJ. No smooth jazz.
I don't make promises I can't keep.
Pete is totally from the generation when Kenny G was big, and also probably familiar with the jazz rock stylings of Steely Dan. For those of you born after the turn of the millennium and don't know who Steely Dan are, they're one of those bands your grandparents probably listened to. Or your parents if you're a millennial or 90s born zoomer such as myself. They're one of the bands most commonly associated with the term yacht rock.
Daryl, get us some guests. Boom, 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 Whoa, Daryl, how'd you get all these people on such short notice?
Shout out to the composers for that conga version of Haifa Nagila. That song lends itself surprisingly well to the genre. Of course, Libby sees what Molly has done with her party and becomes overwhelmed.
Molly, where did all these people come from?
Hey, Mazel tov, Libby.
Overdone joke.
Hey, this is a turtle party, isn't it? So come out of that shell, Libby.
Ugh, I knew that turtle metaphor would come back to haunt me.
This is why I hate that get comfortable with being uncomfortable phrase self-help gurus like to parrot. I get that the phrase is meant to mean try new things, which isn't bad advice in and of itself, but the wording of the phrase is a major yikes. Being made uncomfortable, or in easier to understand terms, being put in situations that cause sensory nightmares and social anxiety is why we autistics set up comfort zones in the first place. In fact, here's a saying that Libby would relate to herself. Turtles don't live in their shells, they are their shells. Let's normalize that as an autism proverb, and just say try new things when we want people to, you know, try new things. We then cut to the candle lighting ceremony as is traditional at B'nai Mitzvah. My Gentile viewers are probably familiar with the horror as a Jewish tradition, which does appear later in this segment, but the candle lighting is probably not as well known, so I'll explain it now. When it comes to the candle lighting, how many candles there are is usually determined by the age of the B'nai Mitzvah, plus one for good luck. The candles themselves are dedicated to family and friends, who are called up to light the candles through a short poem. I've twice written candle lighting ceremonies into my ficlets, and, once again, I do not claim to be an expert. I just write and speak based on what I trust to be true, from what I've read and been told.
Congrats, Libby. I am so proud of the woman you have become.
For those of you that have trouble picking out voices, that's Pamela Adlon voicing Libby's mother Leia. Trust me, you know who she is. In animation, she's known for her roles in Recess, Quackback, Milo Murphy's Law, and on the movie side, a few Studio Ghibli films. And in live action, she's been in the movies Say Anything and Bumblebee, and the shows Californication and Better Things, the latter of which she also created. What, you're still not convinced you know who she is? Well, here's another thing she's known for.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
Yup. She's also the voice of the meme legend Bobby Hill, which is hilarious because it has me picturing Leia kicking Matthias in the nuts. Which I would love to see, by the way. Molly lights the third candle on the cake and promises to stay up on stage with Libby as her anxiety set in, only to see Scratch trying to unleash the bats he had bought for the party.
Oh, no, buddy. Can't have you opening this closet. There's a ghost in there.
I'm a bit of a sucker for cliche flimsy excuses being truthful.
Scratch, this is a big night for Libby, and we don't need your bats ruining it.
It's already ruined. She's invited turtles up to light candles.
To be fair, she was probably gonna do that anyway, her turtles being her only other friends and all. With the candle lighting a bust with the partygoers, Molly thinks of how to get everyone to stay.
What is one thing no middle schooler can resist?
Trolling people with edgelord behavior on websites they're too young to be on?
Slow
Room full of
dancing!
bats.
My second guess would have been Guitar Hero. Wait, that's not a thing anymore? Then whatever other game's the big thing right now. Call of Fortnite. So Molly gets Pete to play smooth jazz and the guests start slow dancing with each other, the kids acting like zombies as they do.
Must find wanna dance.
Actually, is slow dancing a thing middle schoolers do at dances nowadays? Back in my day, they just walked around, hoarded the appetizers and drinks, and only occasionally actually danced. Or maybe that was just a me thing. Oh, and we also didn't dance to smooth jazz. We danced to prog rock, like Rush and Styx and ELP. Also, at this point in the segment, you're probably wondering, particularly if you're unfamiliar with the show and know she likes to say it, when is Molly gonna say "inhappify"? Well, that's the neat thing. She doesn't. The word doesn't actually appear much at this point in the show. In fact, you'd be forgiven for not noticing or remembering she already used it in an earlier segment.
That'll inhappify our little town of Brighton.
Inhappify?
It's a word.
Compared to Season 2, the majority of Season 1 is actually pretty sparse with its use of the word "inhappify." The real turning point, at least as far as I've identified it, is in Episode 16, which is composed of Citizen McGee and the Internship. It's in these two segments she really starts dropping the term, to the point where the latter segment even has a whole song dedicated to it. And after this point, the show flanderizes this aspect of her, and you can expect her to use the term at least once in every segment, or at least once an episode. I will say though, since inhappifying is pretty much what Molly's trying to do in this segment, I'm surprised the term never comes up here. Speaking of which, Molly sees that Libby isn't enjoying the party, and attempts to get the horror started, only for her to run away in fear.
She's probably just being shy.
Submitted for your approval, Molly McGee has hijacked the turtle theming of her best friend Libby stein-torres' bat mitzvah. She interprets the theme as something to be used for the shy Libby to come out of her shell. But reality has other plans, for Molly is about to learn that turtles do not live in their shells, but they are the shells themselves. As she enters the back room that Libby has retreated into.
You keep saying it's my special day, but it doesn't feel like my day at all. You've turned this party into what you thought I wanted.
What was it that you wanted?
To spend time with you! Oh, sorry, it's the hormones, but the feelings are accurate.
And there's another piece of proof I have of Libby being autistic. The fact she has difficulty with setting boundaries, and feels guilty about enforcing them. Trust me, I may come off as a loud and forceful person, but in real life I'm anything but. I actually also have trouble setting boundaries with others, and end up feeling the need to apologize any time I have to raise my voice at someone, even when I know I'm in the right. My trouble with setting boundaries has gotten me into situations I feel embarrassed by no matter how much time goes by. Like having an extra year of high school forced onto me, or having a friend that emotionally manipulated me and took advantage of my people-pleasing nature. And that moment of Libby raising her voice like that?
To spend time with you!
As an introvert like her, I relate to it so much. It makes me want to build the confidence to set boundaries and not feel guilty about it, like my favorite pony did. Not to mention, the scene shows what a talent Lara Jill Miller is as a voice actress. In case anyone thought a high-pitched voice like hers is only fit for saying funny things, or spouting technobabble when given a lisp.
Say hello to Mr. Reinforced Titanium Alloy Arms.
So Molly apologizes for hijacking Libby's party, and goes outside and unleashes the bats that Scratch had bought onto the party.
We need an ice volcano stat.
watching the door. Oh! Now that's a bat mitzvah.
Okay, Anakin.
Now this is pod racing.
Also, you know how I was saying earlier that mitzvahs are good deeds performed to fulfill commandments? Well, potential cases of rabies in the guests from the bats notwithstanding, there is this verse in Deuteronomy I found while reading what the 613 commandments were. Yeah. Not religious myself, but I do think this line best fits what Molly's doing for Libby here. In other words, Molly did a mitzvah for Libby. After the guests are scared away, the bat mitzvah is brought back on track with turtle races, and the segment peters out with one last conversation between Molly and Libby about taking responsibility and becoming an adult. And that was...
Mazel tov, Libby.
I went into the segment thinking I knew what to say about it. I mean, I've seen it many times, and I knew it to be a great representation of Jewish culture. And its representation of Jewish culture was what I thought I was going to be writing this script on. But then I was reminded that, whether or not the writers intended it, it's also a great representation of autism. And need I remind you, June Chen was a whole season out from being a character at this point in the show. TGAMM already had a well-written autism-coded character, and did a segment on what it's like to live with autism, and didn't even need the explicitly autistic character it would later introduce. Because this segment gave me so much to talk about, it ended up ballooning in scope, and I ended up doing several rewrites for this review. Way more than I usually do. I'm the kind of person that likes to do all the drafting in their head. I guess I really wanted to do this segment justice, and I kind of still wonder if I did. I don't know what more I can say that I and every other fan of the show hasn't already said. This segment is a masterpiece, one of the best representations, both of Jewish culture and of autism, that you'll find in media, let alone animation, and another display of just how great a show TGAMM is. Mark my words, this show's gonna go down in Disney's history as one of their defining IPs of the 2020s, and this segment in particular will be the one everyone cites as one of, if not the best, segment of its run. And now it is time for the Phoenix to fly off. Until next time, take care, stay safe, be good to each other, keep AI out of the creative process, and have a good one.